think it's very important, if you're not familiar with what's been achieved, to begin to look around the world. There's a vast amount more than most people would know about, because they may simply not come across it as a daily matter. And so the reason that is the case is because there's scattered efforts all over the world that would be pertinent. But many of these aren't promoted. You would never see them on national television programs or things like that. You might never come across them, and yet they represent a new high water mark in some aspect of individualized practice. So a very good thing, I think, is to have a very good program of educating people about what's out there, and to start familiarizing people with what's out there, because it, of course, plants the seed for replication of what's out there. It also gives people confidence that it can be done, and it gives people a sense of some of the things they're going to have to be mindful of, because the pioneers have come across things that have taught them something. So all of those things are benefits that come from contact with, either direct or indirect contact with good examples. Particularly, I tend to steer people to long-lived good examples. I'm a little bit suspect about examples that have only been around for a year or two or something like that, because you don't really know what's been achieved, whereas you have longer time frames, you've got a bit more of a stable set of accomplishments. So this would be one aspect of change. A second would be to understand what people's thinking was behind what they did. Why is that important? Is because practices are based on thinking, on theories and assumptions, and a line of reasoning of some sort. And many people try to emulate the example without understanding the reasoning that went into the example. And that may mean they'll miss some of the contributors to the good outcomes that they've witnessed. A similar thing about change, and it's of course said often, is that not everybody can create change. In this sense, there's varieties of leadership that are what you might think of as change-related leadership. But it isn't that change-related leadership is a generic type of leadership. Some people's leadership is content-driven, in the sense that they can create change in a particular area because they know that area well. So you need people that have gone through those kind of leadership stages of learning what the content issues are, and that has empowered people then that already have gifts in that regard, or talent, to become more proficient. So in that sense, what you're really working towards is matching the challenge to leaders that have a chance of meeting that challenge. So investing in a diversity of leadership is typically a very good way to get change, because you don't really get all-purpose leaders very often. But you will find people that have a gift in some niche, some particular aspect of the change process, and so that having them be invested in is a really good fit and will bear fruit, because they really do have something going for them. Change can be quite cyclical. People will advance on the wave of enthusiasm or good fortune or favorable support, but then they start running into difficulties, or the tide goes out on support, and there's a kind of a hold on change for a while, or the change is blocked. So the people that are into change as a long-term matter typically do better than people that can only do change when conditions are favorable, because they're not going to be around for the long term. Whereas if you're going to be around for the long term, whatever setbacks you get, you can work around and live to see another day, and to build upon things and regain ground that was temporarily lost, that sort of thing. So in this sense, long-term change involves long-term commitments. Also, leaders work better when they're networked with other leaders. So in this sense, that's what a social movement is, and linking into some of the social movements within sector is very important, because there are aspects of the social movements that are working on one thing and other aspects of a social movement working on another thing, but they may come together on many questions, share a common vision and values, a common political base, common vested interest in the future. And so linking these people with each other is very important, because it produces stronger support, mutual support to each other, but also a certain amount of challenge to each other from each other. It's very fruitful, and often this is done through, almost in many cases, invisible networks, and you might not even know some of these networks existed. And some of these are local networks, some are provincial or state networks, some are national and international networks, but they all can be very, very helpful for essentially getting us to where we need to go. And it doesn't mean that in these networks there's high agreement on everything, but rather that there's a diversity of view, but enough consensus on some fundamentals that people feel we're in this together, we're trying to move the goalposts in a forward direction.